So today I'm going to be reviewing these two popular banana bread recipes that are gluten-free and vegan, and I'm excited to share them both with you. Okay, so in place of our egg, we are going to make some flax eggs, and to do that, we're going to use 2 tablespoons of flaxseed with 6 tablespoons of water, and we're just going to mix it really quick and set it aside while we get our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients ready. Okay, now to a medium-sized mixing bowl, we're going to add 2 cups of oat flour. You could easily achieve that by just grinding oats like in a blender if you don't actually have oat flour handy. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of baking soda, then a half teaspoon of baking powder, and a half teaspoon of some sea salt. And then you're simply just going to, using a fork or whisk or whatever you've got, just mix that really well until everything's incorporated. And again, set that aside while we get our wet ingredients ready. So now to a food processor or a blender, I'm going to add 1 packed cup of some pitted dates. I soaked mine in some boiling water for about 15-20 minutes just to really soften them up. It makes it so much easier to blend. So if your dates are a little dry, that's a step you might want to take into consideration. Then I'm going to add in a half cup of non-dairy milk. I happen to use almond milk. And then a teaspoon of vanilla, and then a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. I should say you can add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. That is what the author suggested that she did. And then I'm just gonna blend or pulse puree this sucker until it looks something like so. All the dates have pretty much broken down. For the most part, it'll look a little chunky, but that's what we're going for. So then I'm just going to move this aside, and we are going to mash up 3 very ripe bananas. Mine were on the way out, so I knew I had to do something with them. Banana bread sounded like a great idea. So you're just gonna mash them down into nothing, and then we're gonna add all of our ingredients together and get it in the oven. So here I'm using a 9x5 pan, and I learned the lesson the hard way. Even though I am using parchment paper, I definitely should have either sprayed it or rubbed it lightly with some coconut oil or some vegan butter, because, as I'll show you at the very end, it's still stuck to the paper. So save yourself the headache and make sure to do that. Or skip the parchment paper altogether. Use a silicone mold, which are awesome. Otherwise, just spray whatever pan you have really well with some cooking spray, or like I said, rub it down with some oil of your choice. So I'm just going to kind of spread it out, and then we are going to stick it in our oven, which is preheated at 350 degrees for about 50 to 60 minutes. So this was the final result, and apart from it sticking, as you can see, to the paper here, which was kind of a pain in the butt, I just saved you guys watching me do that. The flavor overall was really good. I'll show you when I cut it. You really want to use a very sharp or serrated knife, just because typically this sort of bread tends to crumble if you're not careful. And I also highly recommend allowing it to cool completely. Mine didn't cool 100%. I was a little anxious to cut into it. But the center tends to be a little bit moist, a little bit more on the dense side. I'm going to play with it a little bit and see if I can come up with a way to make it a little bit more cake-like and not so dense. But typically when you use bananas in this sort of application, you know, you'll kind of get a center that looks like this. But if you allow this to cool and toast it up and add some vegan butter, now we're talking. It's delicious, and I actually put some butter on this right here. I'll show you, and this is how I like to eat mine. It's not a little bit of butter, I'll admit, but hey, I make my own vegan butter. It's delicious. If you haven't checked out that video, please do. So yeah, all in all, good. I would have liked the consistency or the texture to be slightly different, but this is definitely a good recipe to try out. So the next recipe I wanted to show you guys were these chocolate banana bread muffins, and this was an old video I did literally like over a year ago. So hopefully you can see how my my video skills have improved a little bit over this last year, but the ingredients are listed here. I'm going to put both recipes in the description box, so make sure you check that out. I will tell you this, and I don't know if it has to do with these being muffins as opposed to being in a loaf pan as a loaf of bread, but these suckers came out so moist and so delicious. Yeah, I highly recommend, if you follow this recipe to the T, you should be very successful. And I'll show you again at the end that my muffin tins that I used, I actually used silicone. I cannot tell you how much the silicone molds have made a difference in my life. If you have not tried them, I'll see if I can put a couple links down below to get them from Amazon, but they're everywhere now, guys, and it just makes your life so much easier. But anyway, it's a little bit smaller than your traditional muffin cup size, and 18 minutes is what worked perfectly for me in order to cook these guys. And again, I'll put all that in the description box, but this is one recipe I highly recommend you checking out for, gluten-free, vegan, regular old Omni lover. This is a recipe that everyone will love. So here's those silicone molds I was talking about. Again, they're a little bit smaller than your standard. I baked it at 350 for 18 minutes exactly in my oven, and this is what they looked like. The consistency is awesome. It's super moist, super delicious. I'll show you here. I hope this was helpful, guys, and make sure to like and subscribe for all things plant-based.